Hi, I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Well, today I want to talk about something that is definitely out in the news, and boy, does it seem unbelievable. And I thought I might shed some light on this using astrology. So it was one of my Patreon members, and her name's Anna, that suggested that I look at these charts to make sense of what the truth is. If these charts also as well are correct, you never know with the data and information we're getting, but I've been given these charts and they seem to work, or at least from what my vantage point is. So this is all definitely speculation because we don't know for sure. Number one, that we have the right data. Number two, all of this could be just a big conspiracy. But I'm going to show you my findings and you can take it for yourself what you think about the findings astrologically. So what am I talking about? I am talking about looking at the chart of Brigitte Macron. And there has been a lot of speculation that possibly she's a man. And that the story goes, I'll just make it short because I don't want you to have to go through what I did to try to understand this bizarre story, that somehow it is her brother that took the identity of Brigitte when a little girl in the family died. And so I've been given two charts to analyze to see which one's correct. And by analyzing and seeing which one's correct, we can tell if it's Brigitte or the brother. So in other words, I'm telling you, is it the real Brigitte, which is a woman, or is it her brother, who is John Michael Trenier? So we're going to see from these charts. So I'm going to move over and give you the lowdown on these charts to see what I think. What I did was I took these charts and through my friend's suggestion, looked to see if the timing of events were real in which chart. And I think I have my suspicions of what is possible. But once again, this is strictly speculation and you can take it from looking at the chart yourself. All right, let me scoot over here and show you my findings. So first of all, we're going to put up the chart, and we're going to put them both up side by side because I'm going to be talking about them both. First, let's put up Brigitte Macron's chart, and below that we'll put her supposed brother, Jean-Michel Trenier. So let's see which one works the most. So with this, there's quite an age difference too, by the way. One being born in 1946 and the other one 45 and 1953. So we should be able to see though in this chart if in Brigitte's chart, if she is married to a powerful man that is a president, number one. Number two, was she a teacher? Because she has been a teacher. This is how she met Emmanuel Macron. And what is really interesting, and I think most people know this, there is a huge age difference between the two of them. And it is said that she first met Emmanuel when he was 14 and she was 39, teaching at a school. And Emmanuel was in a play, and she took a liking to him, or he took a liking to her. But it was many years later that they married, because they actually didn't marry till the year of 2007. So, but they met many years prior when he was very, very young. And I read on one account that he fell in love with her, sort of like a schoolboy's fascination with the teacher, and told her when he was very young he was going to marry her. And she was like, okay, well, dream on. But then there's other accounts that she was attracted to him at an early time. I don't know the reality of that. And you know, things get tossed around in the media, and we can't believe half of anything that's out there, right, guys? So let's look at these charts. So looking at Brigitte's chart, born April 13th, 1953, this is a very powerful chart. And what I'm seeing in the area of being a teacher, particularly on a university and a lower level and higher level of teaching, she has the Sun and Mars conjunct in the 9th house of teachers and professors. And this Sun-Mars is extraordinarily strong. Why? Because the Sun is exalted in Aries, meaning it's at its most powerful position, and it's with Mars, which is incredibly powerful in its own sign, in the house of teaching and teachers. That makes huge sense. But going to her brother's chart, Jean-Michel, actually, I think it's Michelle. Now, Michael is the American pronunciation, but Jean-Michel, he has 4 planets in the 3rd house of learning and teaching. So that goes where he could be a teacher. So there's question with the teacher thing. And actually, the moon in his chart rules the 9th house of teaching and teachers, but sits in the 3rd house of teaching. So both of these charts, they could pass for a teacher. Okay. Now, the next thing that I did, which I thought was pretty important, is I looked at Brigitte's dashas for having children. And what I looked at was the first 2 children were actually born in her Venus-Jupiter dasha. Now, you can't see that by looking at the chart. And then again, I didn't look up the exact month, but the year. So whenever a woman is in a Jupiter subcycle or grand cycle, it represents having children. And so the first 2 children came under a Jupiter, or around the time of the Jupiter dasha, which would represent her children. And the 3rd one came under the moon sun, which didn't make that much sense. But what a lot of people don't understand is the 9th house can deal with having children as well, because it's the 5th house from the 5th house. People don't understand. In Vedic astrology, we look at this. It's called Bhavat Bhavam, and it does absolutely work. But being in the sun moon, the moon is in the 8th house, and the 8th house deals with life and birth and death. It represents those huge changes we make in a lifetime. So that made sense. And I also looked at the marriage with her chart. And the first time she got married, which was in 1974, transiting Jupiter was in the house of marriage. And that made total sense to me. Whereas when I was looking at the second chart, Jean-Michel, I noticed that this second marriage actually made sense, and the first one did not. But with Brigitte, both of them, I could see where the marriage would work. Now, just looking at the chart, in terms of everything that's happening today, instead of going backwards and realizing this, and about the marriage to a very, very strong and powerful man, and how would I see if the spouse were younger? Now, Mercury is usually the planet that can deal with younger people, but in reality, I didn't see the younger aspect in this. But here is what I did see, that she is indeed married to a very powerful and complex individual. Because when I look at the house of marriage, yes, there's no planets there, but that's not how you work astrology. You look at the planets that rule houses. And in this case, Saturn rules the marriage house. And you know what's kind of interesting? Saturn usually means older, but it can definitely mean more mature. But her Saturn is exalted, meaning it is all powerful. So the planet that rules the spouse is in an exaltation sign. And it is exactly an aspect to the sun. And the sun is exalted as well. So to have two planets aspecting each other, representing the spouse, because we look at aspects, the planet that rules the seventh is fully aspected by the sun exactly, and they are both all powerful. Now, looking at this also from the moon, thinking the moon as the ascendant, we have the Mars and Sun in the second house. The second house deals with wealth and money. And yes, she has attained great wealth and money. And the second house also deals specifically with early childhood experiences. And there was the death of a child. And let me just say, being born in the 50s, right after World War II, was really tough. So it says early childhood experiences were tough. And even though Jean-Michel, in his chart, he has K2 in the second house from the ascendant, that works because that means something very difficult in childhood occurred. But looking at his chart in terms of marriage to a very powerful person, we're not seeing that as easily. Because Venus, yes, Venus, I do see that Venus rules the seventh, and it is exalted. Yes, that does represent power, and it goes to the fifth house. But more interesting about this is that Uranus sits in the seventh house. Now this really makes sense because this means a very unusual marriage, unconventional, right? Well, that would make sense in this case, if you ask me. That's really interesting. But the Venus going to the fifth, and it is aspected by Jupiter by opposition in the 11th, can represent someone that is highly creative, inventive, and yes, it can even deal with politics, as Venus is in the 5th and Jupiter's in the 11th aspecting Venus. Now, I know I'm probably going over a lot of your heads, but this does mean something to do possibly with politics, yes. So this is giving me a little run for the money to think about how this chart does kind of make sense. But Saturn Rahu in the 8th house does represent a deep, dark issue in life. And actually, looking at that, I really do wonder if he's still alive with Saturn Rahu. I mean, if he is not Brigitte, Where is he? That's kind of an interesting thought. But is Brigitte the one that's not here? And he took her identity? Oh my goodness, it's so confusing. How can this all be? But this is definitely, Jean-Michel's chart is more difficult, much more difficult than Brigitte's. They're both difficult though. It is not easy being married to the president of a country. Let me just say that. That is not an easy thing. And dealing with politics, especially today where it's downright dirty. Who knows what's going on? But going back to Jean-Michel's chart, he has those 4 planets in the 3rd house of younger siblings. And this actually tells me that there is a younger sibling that is extraordinarily powerful. Mars is exalted in Capricorn with the moon, with Mercury, with the sun in the 3rd house of siblings. Wow, Mars is the chart ruler. This is an all-powerful planet, and this can actually be going back to his sister, Brigitte. So going back to Brigitte's, I'm trying to make this simple, and you know as well as I do, astrology is not simple. But I'm going to give you my analysis, and then you can decide. But here is the real clincher, and really about both these charts. Neptune is the planet of deception, deceit, denial, illusions. And it can deal with conspiracies and things that we can't explain. And in both of these charts, we have Neptune opposing Venus. In Brigitte's chart, it is exact. Venus sits at 29 Pisces, exalted, just like the exaltation Venus that Jean-Michel has. But her Venus is very, very interesting, exactly opposed Neptune, which means some kind of deceit, denial, conspiracy. And Venus sits at 29 degrees of Pisces. This is what we consider Gandanta. Gandanta is the last degrees of water, very first degrees of fire. So essentially, her Venus and Sun are conjunct. Look at how close they are. They're less than a degree from each other, and they're both Gandanta, which means major extremes in a lifetime. Major. Things where you feel like you're losing your mind, losing your head. That's what Gandanta means. Out of control. Out of control situations in life. And Venus is combust the sun, and it's retrograde. Combustion with Venus to the sun will really mess up relationships. And yes, she got divorced from her first husband. After meeting, well, I don't know that it started way back when she was teaching Macron, Emmanuel, but there's 2 speculations on that. But this is really weird. I'm telling you, her chart is downright weird. Because not only does she have Venus, she has Moon and Mercury all in the 8th house. This is the house of conspiracies, corruption, dark things of a dark nature. And most of all, it means your life is very, very difficult if you have a lot of planets in the 8th house. It also means a lot of money will come to you through other people. And all of these things are definitely true. The 8th house. It is a house that's said to deal with disgrace and humiliation. And I gotta say, that is how Brigitte feels from all of this drama. And here is what I know to be the truth. Saturn is in Pisces right now. She is also in what we call Sati Sati. Sati Sati is when Saturn comes to the sign of the moon. It's actually when Saturn comes to the sign before, the sign of, and the sign after the moon, which can be said to last for 7.5 years. But I know that when Saturn is in the sign of the moon for 2 years, 2.5 years, it is the worst. And it's in her 8th house of disgrace, humiliation, and scandals. Conspiracy theories. The 8th house is the house of scandals, and so is Neptune. Neptune opposes her Venus, meaning this big scandal that she's dealing with, even though it could be totally false, she's dealing with such a scandal. Conspiracy theory. And she is married to the president of France. Why in the world does she even have to prove herself to anyone or give proof to anyone, whether it's true or not? It's a free world. We can do and marry who we want, right? As long as it's not, well, when she met him, yeah, it could have been serious, but they weren't dating then. Okay, so we could look at this as a very interesting relationship. Venus rules relationships and Neptune's aspecting it. So this is a very unusual relationship, and I'm sure just by the difference of their ages, this has been scandalous. Just with that, because it's so unusual. But here is what I see right now. And one more thing, you know, she has Jupiter in the 10th house. This is elevation to a high position. There is no such thing as a high position with her brother's chart. There is not. It is a much weaker chart. It doesn't have any of the power that this one has. Yes, it can deal with powerful siblings, but this one has power. The 10th house is social standing. It is career. And Jupiter is in the 10th house. Plus, if you will notice, Venus sits in Pisces, which is ruled by Jupiter in sidereal Vedic astrology. We use the old rulerships. And Jupiter is in Venus's sign by being in Taurus. So they have this mutual exchange, empowering each other. But there's so many scandals related to her being at this top position. This explains her life. Therefore, I think this is her chart. And there are many other reasons, but I want to make this simple. I think this is her chart. Much more over the other chart. Definitely. And here is one of the main reasons why. Right now, as we speak, Saturn is transiting in Pisces, and it is actually sitting exactly, as I speak, on her natal Mercury. Exactly. Yes, Saturn sits at 2 degrees today. And right now, it's around October 18th when I'm filming this. So Saturn is at 2 degrees of Pisces on her Mercury. In the 8th house of disgrace, humiliation. And what I'm trying to say is what she's going through with this event proves that this is her chart, because she's feeling Saturn on her Mercury. What is Mercury, by the way, in astrology? It deals with communications, the public, the media. It's in the 8th house of scandals. And transiting Saturn sits on it today and will be there for the next few months. Saturn will be in Pisces for the next few years. And by the time it crosses over her moon and her Venus, that will be another crisis period. Moon in the 8th house. You know, I could suspect from all of the worry and disgrace that she's felt from this entire thing, it's making her sick. I'm sure anyone would be sick with such things said about you. So, looking at her chart, I mean, really, this has to be her chart. And what she's going through right now makes me sad, because it's painful and it's hurtful what I feel like she is feeling right now, whether it's from this or not, but I can see it in this chart because Saturn is on her Mercury. And what else is Mercury? Mercury is the media. So she's always being attacked by the media and people putting out information about her, false or real. It's just so extreme. So this is so interesting, though, that Neptune opposes her Venus. And Venus sits exalted in the 8th house of scandals and Neptune scandals. So this whole thing is scandalous, and whether it's true or not, she's experiencing it. And even as we find out things aren't true, isn't it interesting that some people will believe it, even with the facts? People believe what they want to believe. Isn't that a sad thing? People won't even look at the facts. So this is my analysis. And believe what you want to believe, but do look at facts. And this chart works. Therefore, I don't know how she could be your brother. If these charts are correct, by the way. But looking at her chart, I must say, there is a lot of scandal concerning love and marriage in her life, period. And regardless if this whole thing is correct, the fact that she married a man that is old as her children and became essentially the First Lady of France. I don't know what you call that. That's what we call it here. But there's so many scandals that her chart reveals, and deep, dark things. And even if this is not true, which I'm leaning towards, but there is a lot of hidden information about her life and relationships. So let's leave it there, because this is all a big conspiracy theory. And I just wanted to show you how astrology works in order to better understand what's going on. And one thing I can assure you, she is going through hell right now. And it is rather sad that anyone has to be subjected to humiliation like this. So I hope you've learned something about astrology. That's a reason why I do this. This is all speculation, and I thought it would be a fun way to teach astrology, because world events are always the most interesting, especially with current affairs. So with that, I would like to remind everyone, sign up for my free newsletter and go to my website, galacticcenter.org. And while you're there, please check out my Patreon. This is where we got the information from my Patreon members, and they wanted me to air this for you. So be part of Patreon, where you can give me advice, what you want me to do videos on, as well as remember my Galactic Planner. We are adding so many new things. I am so busy writing for the planner. The planner is Real Astrology by real astrologers. If you want your birth chart done, where you can see your transits daily and understand how to live by the stars, go to galacticplanner.com. All the other planners out there and the apps, they are done by AI, which I have found to be actually many times incorrect. You want the correct information from real astrologers, not AI. That is, it's junk. So I thought you might want to know that. So go to galacticplanner.com, and don't forget, if you want to study with me, I have an entire university. If you want to learn astrology, go to universityofvedicastrology.com. Thank you.